1978, Northern Ireland. It's technically spring, but it's wet. The outlook is pretty bleak. Me and Bernie are 13. We've got our own theme song. The Things We Do for Love by 10cc, not because we're romantic in any way, but because it's got a weirdly nihilistic chorus. We're kind of half kid, half teenager, so we head into town, we link our arms, we're kind of splashing in the puddles and channeling the teenage angst, dramatically singing our song, like walking in the rain and the snow when there's nowhere to go, and you're feeling like a part of you is dying. This was Bernie, my first best friend. We'd grown up next door to each other, living at the edge of our small border town. We were both the youngest of four. She was only 9 months older than me, but somehow Bernie was streetwise and I was not. So she decided all our adventures. When we were 4, we spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to find the entrance to Alice in Wonderland in the fields around our house, until I got stuck in a rotting tree trunk and Bernie had to go and find help. And then later on in primary school, when we were in our Enid Blyton Famous Five stage, Bernie suggested that we spend our playtimes looking for clues in the playground at the spot where the IRA had launched the mortar bomb at the police station next door the night before. Until somebody told us if we actually found anything, we'd probably be kneecapped. So we gave that up. But the big problem with Northern Ireland and our small town in the 70s was that there was literally nothing to do. There were no facilities. They just built a play park, but it was at the wrong end of town. The last time we were there, we ended up getting stones thrown at us by some Protestant boys, and we hid under the slide until Bernie got hit in the head. So Bernie was banned from going there. There were no organised sports, not for girls anyway, certainly not for Catholic girls, unless you count Irish dancing. But I'd kind of grown tall and gangly, and I couldn't really do Irish dancing anymore. Growing tall also put paid to our other activity, snogging. We called it Curtain in Tyrone. That was the name for it. I couldn't really kiss a boy my age unless he stood on a milk crate. That wasn't one of the things I was prepared to do for love. I mean, only once or twice. So when Bernie suggested that we take up shoplifting as our new hobby for the spring, I thought, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Shoplifting in the 70s was quite low risk. I don't know if any of you tried it. There was no CCTV, no sneaky mobile phone footage. Winona Ryder, eat your heart out. It was kind of edgy, a little bit grown up. And importantly for us, with our Catholic guilt, it was morally neutral. We would only steal from Protestants. Just about everything in our world had a Protestant and a Catholic counterpart. The schools, right down to the school buses, shops and pubs, churches, obviously. The funny thing in our town was that Catholics only needed one church, but we had loads of pubs. And for the Protestants, it was the other way around, and we thought they got a really rough deal. But stealing from Protestants was really just levelling the economic playing field, because they'd stolen our land hundreds of years before, and they still had all the best jobs in houses. So we set off for the chemist initially, and the beautiful lady who ran the chemist didn't religiously profile us, so we made off with a mountain of blue eyeshadow and salmon pink nail polish, until our bedroom drawers were getting so full that our already suspicious mummies were going to get more suspicious. Although I kind of suspect that my mummy would have been secretly delighted that I was shoplifting makeup, in the hopes that I might actually wear some and start making something of myself. So today we were moving on to the toy shop. Toy shops in Northern Ireland in the 70s didn't really hold anything very exciting for the average healthy teenager. They weren't allowed to sell anything that resembled a weapon or made a bang or a flash. It was still pretty magical, though. The reason they weren't allowed to do that was because we had British teenagers patrolling our streets, brandishing machine guns, and they might accidentally shoot us if we looked like we were carrying a gun. So we went into the toy shop. It was kind of long and narrow, high shelves, a bit like something out of Hogsmeade. It smelled of wood and boiled sweets, not like Toys R Us. We didn't really want anything in there, but we kind of grabbed something cheap near the door. The shop owner spotted us. Bernie ran out the door and I froze. I thought maybe he might not know who I was. I didn't really know any Protestants. Miss Ronan, put that back now. I complied. Please don't tell my parents. He was right next to me now. I looked up at him with what I'd been told were my big, innocent eyes, trying desperately not to look like a hardened Fenian criminal. One of the ways that we could tell Protestants, apart from the rest of us, back then, apart from the fancy schmancy houses and the better jobs, was that they had really thick necks. I think maybe from playing rugby or generations of farming stolen land. But I noticed that Mr. Hamilton didn't have a particularly thick neck. I'm thinking maybe that's why his parents put him into toy shop management instead of a more traditional Protestant occupation, like police officer or abattoir worker or something like that. He doesn't even look very angry. Oh no, he looks sad. I can feel the Catholic guilt rising up in my chest. I try to swallow it down and look down at my really soggy Dunlop trainers. I'm not going to tell your parents. He sounded less scary now, less like one of the Protestants on the telly. Don't let me catch you in here again. I mumbled some inarticulate thanks and backed out of the shop. I think I was probably bowing. I was really glad Bernie couldn't see me. I find Bernie where I know she'll be, sitting on the windowsill of the Catholic newsagent at the top of the town. I sit down beside her. I sing a couple of lines of Good Morning Judge by 10cc, just to wind her up, before I tell her the good news. This was back before the universe was in charge, so we assumed that it was God that was responsible for our good fortune. Maybe one of the saints that our mummies prayed to. Although it was unlikely our mummies were praying that if we were actually stealing from Protestants, we'd get away with it. But we thought we'd light a candle the next time we went to the chapel, just to make sure that they knew we appreciated the help. We dangled our legs for a wee bit. Our old primary school was opposite. It was shut down now. It was actually being turned into yet another Catholic pub. The RUC station was still there. It was really heavily fortified after that attack. It looks like something out of Mordor. We didn't really have a lot of this left. In 4 years, Bernie would have her 18th in the Scholars Bar. We'd get very drunk, and then we'd head off to London to live at opposite ends. Bernie would live with the London Irish on the west, where she'd eventually meet and marry Mick O'Reilly. And I'd go to my very British, posh medical school, where I'd eventually be charmed by an English Protestant boy with a relatively slender neck. I stood up. My arse was getting cold. I didn't have much padding on it. What are we going to do now? Bernie looked wise and thoughtful. Why don't we go and see if we can buy some single cigarettes, take them down the play park and see what the crack is? Smoking, I thought. That's not very high risk. I could try that. She stood up and we linked arms. We walked down past the soldiers in the next doorway and started singing Rubber Bullets, just not completely under our breath. And we were feeling a little bit more like titanium. Thank you.